Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you over at patreon.com/TAC. For more podcasts like The Angry Chicken, check out amove.tv. That's AMOVE.tv.
Hey everyone! Get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is The Angry Chicken.
Greetings and welcome back, everyone, to The Angry Chicken. I'm Garrett, she's Jocelyn, and it's just the two of us. We're finally done with just a string of awesome guests that you would probably rather listen to than us.
I was going to say, I'm glad you added the caveat after that to say, like, our awesome guests, because I was like, no, like, the guests were good. I want people to know that we had a lot of fun having all those different people. Oh, my God, Cora. Oh, so much love for Cora. She was so good.
Thoroughly, like, all of our guests are rad, and I was really excited about all of them. And I don't want to take anything away from Vigil or Raven or anyone else, but I have been touting the Cora episode as one of the better episodes I think we've done in a while. Just because the interview portion, like, which we didn't plan, y'all, we were just like, all right, it's top of the show. We're usually kind of free with the discussion point of the episode. Let's just see where this goes. It went to so many deep and human places that I really enjoyed, and I was so stoked that Cora got that candid with us. So if you missed last week's episode for some reason, you should go listen to it. But so we're here holding down the TAC fort, and we have some announcements before we get into today's episode. Today's like an episode of like mystery and theories and rumors and announcements of announcements. But there's no big announcements yet, but it sure as hell sounds like there's some big ones coming. But we have announcements that we can make. We are not announcing any announcements. We are just making straight up announcements. First off, is a scheduling change to next week. If you are one of the folks that are diehard Angry Chicken fans who are in here every week watching us live in our chat room over at twitch.tv/AMoveTV, well, next week, we're going to be recording the show a day early. We're going to be going live on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So park your butts over in the AMove TV Twitch channel and get ready to chat with us. Because I don't know if you know this, but there's like another big Blizzard game releasing on Tuesday. We're going to all collectively get in a time machine together and go back to 2004 with the launch of Classic WoW. And Jocelyn, you and I might be, playing that game on Tuesday.
Very, very likely, yeah. So, I mean, I'll have my normal WoW raid on Tuesday night, but yeah, most of the day on Tuesday, I'm going to be poking into Classic. I'm super stoked. Garrett, I don't know, are you on Whitemane and Peggle with your characters?
I'm on Peggle. I will never be on Whitemane because it's a PvP server, and I am 32 years old. I am 32 years old, and I do not have more hours than are in an honest-to-God week to dedicate to World of Warcraft to actually make any progress on a PvP server.
Well, I am on a PvP server, so I do have my character on Peggle as well. So I'm sure, hopefully we can get some time to actually play together. I'm not too interested in any kind of like dungeons or raiding. I mostly just want to like see the world and the questing and feel out my character. But I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. So that's what our plans are for Tuesday. So do come check it out because I'll be streaming when I play. So
yeah. Also, like, just the idea of having the Angry Chicken out like first thing Tuesday morning for all of you who are just like hitting Azeroth hard to listen to while you level, that makes me happy. So enjoy an Angry Chicken one day earlier than usual next week, coming at you on Monday. Also, next week's episode, we are going to be joined by a very special guest, Jocelyn. We're going to be doing an interview with Celestalon. I'm fairly certain
so
we get to like be the first outward like straight up interview like post media training stop for Celestalon, and I'm so freaking excited about it because if y'all have been listening to the English, if you've been keeping up, you probably heard Jocelyn and I geeking out about Celestalon's tweets about the history of Zephyrus, and it got our gears turning. We were like, oh man, it'd be so cool if we get Celestalon on and just like have him tell the story of Zephyrus, because as Raven said, it sounds like this card has been something in the back of Team 5's mind for years.
Yeah, it seems like they've actually been working on it and trying to figure out how they could actually program it into the game for literally years. So I think the fact that they finally actually got it out and working in this set is just such a feat from what the sounds of it. So I'm super excited to get some like clarification on how like the nitty gritty back end Cody part works. And I'm going to call it that. Yeah. I could tell me how the Cody part works.
That's our first question, actually. I have the
is.
approved question right in front of us. And the first question actually is, tell me how the Cody part works.
So yeah, I'm interested to see like get a little bit of insight in how the back end of Hearthstone works and the complications around creating a card like Zephyrus. And I mean, Celestalon's just, he's so fun. I mean, the man spreads rainbow hair colors to the world. So he's amazing. And I can't wait to talk to him.
I would like to go to the Celeste Salon.
Yes, he does that before BlizzCon every year. Maybe not now because he's working on Hearthstone stuff. I don't know, but
hey, so, you know, I know we're going to talk to you very soon, Celeste Salon, but if you're listening and you'd like to do my hair before BlizzCon, I'm down. Let's
me too.
Yeah, and Joss. Yeah, we're going to do an Angry Chicken.
It's been blonde way too long. Like, this is boring.
Mine has been naturally colored for way too long. And there's a lot more grays than there ever used to be. But I'm really looking forward to that. We're going to talk to Celestalon about Zephyrus. We're going to have like a very Zephyrus focused interview with Celestalon, as well as your normal, regularly scheduled episode of The Angry Chicken, bringing you news, strategy, crazy game stories, emails, and more, which we're going to do today. Before we get to that, we want to thank our patrons supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. If you like what Jocelyn and I are doing here and you want to support us, support this podcast, and get some neat perks like early signups for our community tournaments, the taco, as we like to call them. You get access to the patron-only Discord. You get after-show recordings. We put one up last week when we had Cora on. All of that just by signing up over at patreon.com/TAC. And to one of our newer patrons, Luke N., thank you so much for supporting us and signing up over at patreon.com/TAC. We appreciate it. And now we're going to get to the show with this week's Hearthstone news.
Good news, everyone!
Jocelyn, I can't believe I am about to utter these words, but I am impatiently awaiting the next installment of Hearthstone Solo Adventures.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because I know I had probably outside of puzzle mode, the most fun I've ever had in single player Hearthstone with the last release with Oldham. Or not Oldham. Oh my God. Why am I blanking on this? Rise of Shadows. Oh my God. But yeah, that iteration of solo single player content was so much fun. I played so much of that, especially when like traveling and having not the most reliable mobile internet and stuff. Like it was my go-to content last expansion, and it was so much fun. So I assume, because we don't know too much about this yet, right? Like they haven't told us too much, but I would assume that it's going to continue along the same lines as the first solo adventure of the year. So I'm expecting things like, unlockable hero powers, unlockable decks, like all that kind of stuff that made it feel like it was more worth playing than just, playing for fun. Like I like having goals and things to do. So even if they're like totally manufactured things, I understand that. But
I've got news.
Like having like goals and numbers to see counting up.
I've got news for you, Joss. Everything in a video game is technically manufactured.
I guess. But like, what I mean is like, I could make my own quest, like defeat Wing 1 with Warlock 10 times or something. But because there isn't that UI thing in the game telling me it's being tracked, it doesn't mean as much to me.
I need unlockables.
I want someone else to set my goals and show my progress. And then I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I need permanent unlockables. And that's what they gave me. And it did a lot. And also Bob the Bartender. Y'all can keep sending us the greatest Photoshops of all time about the robot bartender. But I know it's a hoax. And I'm on to you, Internet. I'm on to you. And just honestly, because apparently... I can't believe
like the depths of this conspiracy theory, because I still to this day get Bob every time.
Never.
Bob.
Never have I seen him. Disclaimer, this is totally a gag, and all of you tweeting at me being like, no, it's real. Yeah. My sarcasm is apparently too earnest. Yeah, but we do seem to be moving towards, at the very least, some news on the next solo adventure. So I wasn't aware of this. Actually, this was like a day ago brought to my attention by our patron Discord, that if you go into solo adventures, the title of the solo adventure, Tombs of Terror, has just been hanging there, saying that it's going to open soon, in quotations. I'm surprised it didn't have a TM next to it.
I would probably be leaning too much into the meta of the internet.
yeah. And then literally like the next day after I saw that message in the Discord, it was brought to my attention that it had been updated to no longer say soon, but it says opens in 5 weeks. So there's a countdown now, Jocelyn. There's a countdown to the Tombs of Terror. So the week of the 23rd, which would put it most likely on a Tuesday, which would be September 24th, if we're going by logic of every recent Hearthstone update.
Hatchkubo in the chat room is saying now it says open in 4 weeks, so must have updated sometime today,
I would imagine.
Does that keep the date the same?
Yes.
Okay.
This is what happened.
I was like, opens in, Joss must open calendar and count.
That would make sense. And there's also been some talk about it from Blizzard employees. On Reddit last week, Mike Dene said that the team was, quote, or will, quote, start talking about it, the next adventure, in a week or two. So we should be hearing about it either this week or next week, Joss. If he said a week or two, and this was last week, so.
Yeah. So this week or next. Yeah. I'm super stoked. I want to see what they've got for us. I mean, it sounds like, just from the name, like Tombs of Terror, like we will be delving Indiana Jones style, which is fun. It kind of like a cross between like League of Explorers and maybe like Kobolds type stuff. I don't know, but should be cool. Should be fun. I've really liked the flavor of this set in Saviors of Uldum. Really, the flavor of Rise of Shadows is pretty good too. So I think this is, I'm interested to see, especially since we know this is like chapter 2 of 3 in terms of the Hearthstone story for Year of the Dragon. I think that seeing what this actually looks like and what story they're trying to tell with Tombs is going to be really interesting.
I'm with the chat room. I hope we just finally get to see Sir Finley's weapon in use outside of the intro.
Right?
Because Reno's card has his wooden Gatling gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's magic, so I guess that makes sense why it's wooden. But Finley, he's just riding like a mech spider thing.
Yeah, without his golden fish.
Yeah, where's the golden fish? It's right here. It's right on my video. He's right behind me. He's about to smack me with the golden fish.
Yeah.
It's green fish because I hit it with the green wash because I was like doing color washes on my background images. But, you know, you get it. You get it. I'm looking forward to it. Also, Joe Mag, who tweets at us pretty often, actually, he's on I believe the Brawl team, if I'm not mistaken. He replied in a Reddit thread confirming that there is indeed a quest chain coming that's going to lead into the Tombs of Terror opening.
Oh, that sounds so fun. Yeah. They've just been doing such a good job with the single player content lately.
And it has really influenced and upped to the quality of Tavern Brawl, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's been great. I've been really happy with all of it. So bring it on, Tombs of Terror. I am so here for you. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about esports, because we had our second major Masters event of the year over the weekend in Seoul, Korea, which started for me by being far too entertained watching Brian Kibler almost miss his flight on Twitter.
Yeah, so this is the second of 3 events that are happening this year in terms of the Masters Tour, which is the tier lower than Grandmasters. And I managed to catch a little bit of it. So if you guys were following my Twitter this weekend, I was actually working a Beyond the Summit event. So I basically would finish work around 2 a.m., which was right around the time that Master Soul was starting. So I got to watch a couple of matches before I'd go to bed.
But crazy person.
I was working the whole weekend, so I didn't get to catch as much of it as I wanted to. But the times that I did catch it, there was some Reno Mage. And we're Reno Mage, and every day Reno Mage. I was like, okay, this is a thing that's happening now.
Yeah. I don't even have to call it Highlander Mage. I've been trying to say Highlander and Singleton more than I used to. Like, we just say Reno. If it was a one-up deck,
just everyone knows what Reno means.
Since back in the day when it was new, it was because of Reno. Eventually we got Kazakus, but you still usually also played Reno. But this one has Reno in it, and it's an actual Highlander Mage, so I can just call it that. Yeah, it was very, very popular. If you're one of those people who believe esports spoilers are spoilers, I disagree with you, but I will respect your concern and inform you we are about to spoil it for you. All right, you gone? Cool. It came down to the finals between a Highlander Reno Mage and a Highlander Reno Mage piloted by Falcine and Zim. They faced off in the finals, both piloting this deck. It was very, very, very popular. The semis, though, were great. We had a Hunter, a Warrior, and then 2 Mages in the semifinals.
I think I did catch one of the Hunter matches. It might have actually been in the semifinals. So I'm glad that there was a little bit of variety, I guess, through the weekend. I guess it's just my luck to kind of catch all the Mage matches, but I did enjoy the Highlander Mage mirror matches, though, because it's Highlander decks, Reno decks in general, I find interesting because of the differences between the decks potentially, and especially in the specialist format where you have so much room to tech things. So I do find the mirrors to be interesting because there's like, what order do you draw them in? When do you use your resources? Like anytime you have any kind of Highlander mirror, whether it is the Mage deck or any other deck, it's always really interesting to see how people choose to use their resources because they only have one of. So I find there's a lot of interest in the commentary around Highlander decks, period.
Yeah, something was very apparent to me this weekend, since we're back to the specialist format in Masters, is that Highlander decks help a lot, I think, with the kind of sameness of the specialist format, because from game to game, the draws can be so wildly different because of the nature of a Highlander deck. So I really liked that. I thought the semifinals were absolutely incredible. I don't want to take anything away from the finals, but it did feel a bit like, I don't know. Actually, another thought I had while watching this was like, this was the most StarCraft I ever felt Hearthstone esports felt like.
Please explain.
Well, specifically the finals, like it felt like watching a ZVZ, a Zerg versus Zerg mirror matchup, and in StarCraft, like Zerg, it's like so razor's edge. Like both opponents are on. Like 100% of the time, they don't have a second to breathe because of the fast notion of like a Zerg unit. And like one little misstep and crap, they flooded my base and I'm dead. And that's how this Mage mirror felt. Was just like,
now I understand. I was like, did they secretly like change Hearthstone to an RTS or something? Like,
no, I'm talking about this razor's edge of this,
but
of this, like just kind of waiting for one of the mages to go off. And like you said, what was interesting was like the very first few turns, and with the coin or without the coin, especially with Zephyrus. I mean, we saw we got to see Zim 2 games back to back start the game with Zephyrus and kind of talk through the mentality of why you would go wild growth on if you're going first versus why you wouldn't if you were going second. And that was just wildly fascinating to me. And the fact that like once one of the mages got the first punch in, it was kind of just like lights out from there. And which made the finals go by pretty quickly. And they were over at a fast pace, but I really enjoyed Falcine versus Magaho because I was like, I found myself getting like furious at Magaho for nothing else other than, picking warrior and being lucky as a warrior. Like I was getting mad at this player. I was yelling at my television because Magaho was lucky. Yeah.
I know those feels sometimes, especially if you're rooting for one specific player, then it's kind of like, oh man, how did he get so lucky? I really want X person to win. Why is this happening? And I will say though, just talking about rooting for specific players, that was one thing that I know that like, for instance, like Slissa, I know was there and I was hoping that she would do well, but I never did see her. I don't even know if she did play on stream, but it seemed like in this event, more so than Vegas, anytime I tuned in and when I looked at like the top 8, there wasn't anybody who jumped out at me as like players I recognized and players that I knew and would be cheering for, which I think is good and bad, because on the one hand, you have the potential to be introduced to new players that you might not know, but at the same time, it's kind of like I might have stayed up if, say, like Sidonia was in the top 8 or something. I might have made sure that I watched that match, but the fact that I didn't really recognize any of the names, like I think Falcine is the only name that really stuck out to me as someone that I was vaguely aware of prior to this event. So I mean, it's kind of good because it shows that there's people who are making their way up through these Master Tours events, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't have any connection to any of these people, which also is kind of good because then you could just appreciate Hearthstone for what it is, right? And be like, oh yeah, that was a really cool play. And then next game, oh, the other guy made a really cool play, and that's kind of good, as opposed to the happy mad that you get when you're actually cheering for someone who's on the wrong end of RNG.
Yeah, it was cool seeing the new blood, which is what I was like hoping Vegas would feel like. Like again, I don't want any of my comments to take things away from anyone. Like I thought Dog earned that win, but it's like, well, I see plenty of Dog and Grandmasters. I was actually hoping to see new faces, and that's exactly what this gave me. And also, like I was thinking about like the first time I ever heard you really get stoked about like Canadian players performing very well. I think it was like 2 years ago now. And I was looking at this, I'm like, my God, 3 of the 4 players in the playoffs are French. So it's like, if you're a French Hearthstone fan, this event must have just blown your mind to the back of the auditorium.
Absolutely. And I mean, there is that element of, I mean, that's how I found, Purple and Sidonia and Monsanto too, originally, was like, I wasn't paying attention to who else was in the tournament. I was like, let me find the Canadian flags. Those are now my favorite Hearthstone players. Let's go.
Yeah. So it was good. And again, if you haven't watched Magaho versus Falcine, like it's insane. It's so crazy. Like the freaking game 2, the luck on Magaho's side, and the fact that Falcine ends up still winning that game. Oh boy,
shows
Josh!
A huge level of skill, right?
Yeah, it's a huge level of skill, but it also really showcases just the power level of both of these decks, of why Warrior is as powerful it is, and just how powerful Mage is by comparison. The fact that it can pull off a win in the dire straits that it was in. And I'm trying very hard not to talk about the possibility of nerfs right now, because that's what we're going to talk about here in just a second. But it was just kind of this shining beacon of why, when we talk about potential nerfs, Mage and Warrior comes up time and time again.
Yeah. And like you said, we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes, but man, even like, I mean, you've got written in the notes that like Falcine in his interview afterwards was like, I focused on drawing Pocket Galaxy. Like, yep.
Oh, did you hear the crowd? There was just an ooh, like in unison. When he said that, I was like, ooh, Falcon, you cheeky bastard.
It takes a lot of skill to draw your deck in the right order, Garrett. Come on.
Oh, he made some magnificent plays, but yeah, that being the answer. Yeah, let's just move on and talk about some other blue responses this week. If you missed Master Soul, the whole thing's up on YouTube. Go to the Hearthstone eSports YouTube. It was not a convenient time for me, and I still think these games, a lot of these games are still worth watching, so go check it out. But it sounds like balance changes are very much on the horizon. Jocelyn, this was replying to a comment that had some concerns about single-player content and that it was being maybe pulling rank over a balance patch, even though that is not how Hearthstone development works. That's not how it works. The people that do the single-player content are not the people balancing the game.
This is such a big total, like, I can't even eye roll hard enough.
It is. This is such a trigger for me. But regardless of how not accurate,
relevant
that
the
concern
comment
is Mike Dene did get in and reply to that concern, saying, quote, "Yep, we will give more info on balance changes this week, hopefully." And so I assumed it was going to be today, because they've been pretty good about like hitting stuff on Tuesdays, which has been wonderful for this podcast. But they didn't. So I'm assuming tomorrow or Thursday. I can't think of a Friday announcement in recent memory.
Yeah, and well, they're talking about like Donae's comment of we'll give more info on balance changes this week. Hopefully, makes me think that they're, you know, maybe holding off a little bit, wanting to make sure that they target all the cards that need targeting and that their nerfs are well thought out. I'm assuming. I mean, I say nerfs. I'm assuming when they say balance changes, they mean nerfs, but I should get that out of my head because it could totally include buffs after the Rise of the Mech event. Like buffs are no longer off the Hearthstone table. So I like when I hear balance changes, I think nerfs, but there could be buffs too. Who knows?
I think there's still a precedent to be set that they are comfortable making a buff outside of an event like they would have balanced like a nerf as terms of a balance update. Because like they didn't really like the buffs were an event. That was like clearly something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clearly something they had a meeting about. It also came on the back of a new legendary just being added to the game out of nowhere. It was themed and all this stuff. So I think that I'm not against it. And I don't think it is off the table by any means because they have surprised me time and time again here in 2019. But I think that precedent still remains to be set.
I mean, yeah, like historically, all of our balance changes have consisted of nerfs. The Rise of the Mech event was an event, a standalone thing. It wasn't like they were like, hey, balance changes plus a new legendary. So I think that, it's probably nerfs. I just want to, I need to just start saying balance changes, period, instead of calling them nerfs, because you really never know with this team, which is a good thing, which is a really, really good thing. So, I mean, if we're talking about potential balance changes, I would 100% expect Warrior and Mage to be the recipients of some nerfs because, oh my God, Dr. Boom, Mad Genius makes me want to like punch my computer screen. I was going to say flip my table, but no, like I literally I see him and I want to punch him in the face. Just like, boom, He makes me so mad. I want to see him deleted. And I don't say that lightly because,
I mean, you said it pretty lightly. That sounded like it just rolled off the tongue.
Well, the thing is with Dr. Boom, it's like, I mean, we did have the conversation last week, and I still do agree that the fact that Dr. Boom exists and that Control Warrior exists is holding a lot of other things in this meta in check, which is a good thing. But honestly, when they coin Boom or play Boom on 7, it's so frustrating because it feels like you just can't win from there. And that's just, oh man, it just tilts me so hard. It tilts me worse than anything else in this game. He just does way, way, way too much. So I hope we see actual like changes to him as a card because man, he frustrates the heck out of me.
I agree. Like this, I haven't been this like salty about a card's dominance or prominence since Yaxaran. But there's just so many angles to Dr. Boom. Like I don't know where they focus. Did they even focus on Dr. Boom? Because again, there's a mega assembly. That is a big part of the problem with Dr. Boom as a mega assembly. But to me, it's just the rush. The rush is such a problem. Like it's in Warrior. Mm-hmm. It's a class that has no lack of options for removal. They can control the board better than any class in the game, and you're now going to just flip a switch that says your minions, almost all your minions, they're just removal now too, on top of your already existing removal that you put in your deck before we even started this game.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, and Omega Devastator is another one where it's like they can target a gigantic minion and then use the 4/5 body to rush into and clear some of your smaller stuff. Like it just, when you're getting that much value out of such a low mana cost minion, and yeah, I mean, you have to then play him on 10 and after Boom and everything else. But I mean, it just, it's so frustrating and so demoralizing to play against a playstyle like that because, I mean, you've got the hero powers, which are for the most part, other than the 1 damage to all enemies, which still often gets a lot of work done because you have rushing mechs. So you rush your mechs all in, get everything down to 1 health. You've got bodies left on board, and then you clear with your hero power. Like, I mean, the hero power itself is super powerful. Discovering a mech means you never run out of stuff. Plus the 7 armor means that you live through a lot of things that you wouldn't normally, and you're just sitting there every time it comes up, and all of a sudden, you've got 21 extra health, and it's like you haven't really earned that at all. And then, yeah, like you said, the fact that you're discovering minions that then also gain rush, regardless of what their other power is. There's just the whole Dr. Boom package is very frustrating to play against. I mean,
yeah, and so that's kind of my point.
I don't know how they change it other than just like this turn your mechs have rush. I don't know. That's
something I would like to see. I personally, I am leaning towards the rush portion of Dr. Boom as being kind of my biggest gripe with the card. Obviously that's a personal thing, and who knows if that's what they're gonna focus on or not. But there's so many avenues, and I don't want them to just completely gut the card. I don't want the bottom to fall out of Dr. Boom, because I do believe that it is keeping the meta in check. And overall, I think the meta is pretty healthy. I do think Dr. Boom is making the control options pretty stale.
Well, the thing about Dr. Boom is he basically makes it so that any other control deck isn't as good. So why would you play any other control deck when you can play a deck with Dr. Boom? And I also feel like he's a card that as warrior, you basically just put him in everything. Like, regardless of what you're trying to do, you just put them in everything. And those are the kind of cards in the past that we have seen we've seen Team 5 kind of target with nerfs, because they don't want to necessarily have a card that works where you just go, okay, I put in card X and then build a deck, whatever other deck I want to build. I mean, you could argue that with Druid, like that's what Wild Growth was, right? And Innervate before that. It's like, okay, I put Innervate, Wild Growth in my Druid deck, and then I do whatever I want from there. And I think Boom falls into that category. So I fully expect, I mean, you've got Bomb Warriors playing Boom, you've got Control Warriors playing Boom, you've got even like, I've even seen like aggressive Face Warrior decks and they just put Boom in because why not? So yeah, I think those are the kind of things that we've seen targeted in the past, and that's what I expect to see with balance changes. I freaking hope.
Yeah. So that's a thing. So there's all those angles to that. There's its effect on the meta. There's the meta as a whole as well, which is just also powerful. Like there's really powerful things happening across a lot of the classes in Hearthstone right now. Luna's Pocket Galaxy is a big one as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, we haven't even talked about Mage yet, which I think there's a bunch of different Mage things that could potentially be targeted. But I mean, Pocket Galaxy is obviously the big one. And that's the one that when they announced the buff in the first place, I was like, a 2-mana jump is a really, really big buff. And this might be a mistake because it was seeing basically no play or, niche play around the 7-mana mark, but at 5 it did very much seem, especially in a meta that isn't necessarily very heavily dominated by super aggressive decks, they had the time to essentially sit back, spend 5 mana, and then just dominate the game after that point, because they weren't about to die on turn 5. So
right,
this is a meta where Pocket Galaxy, you could play it on 5 and that was fine. And then you had this hugely powerful deck going forward. So I said when the buff first happened that it was probably too much. And it seems like that happens too early in the game. It doesn't allow aggressive decks enough time to roll over a mage before that point. So I hope they don't go all the way back up to 7. I would like to see probably 6, just because I think at 7 it wasn't seeing play, right? And the whole point of buffs is to make cards see play. So I don't want to see them go all the way back to 7. But I think maybe 6 might be the happy Galaxy place.
I'm a little harsher on Pocket Galaxy. I think it's a pretty egregious misstep. Because I felt like we had learned our lesson.
It's a very powerful effect for sure.
We weren't Kelisething anymore. Like we had figured it out. Hearthstone, we don't want Keliseths. We don't want major power swings that are tied to a single card, so that if you draw it, you have a significantly higher chance to win your game versus when you don't. And yet we go and slap an insane discount on Luna's Pocket Galaxy. So I'm looking at that one going, yeah, if it goes back to 7, I'm not going to shed a tear. Like, bye, see ya. I would really like to see this card kind of go away.
Just gone. Yeah. Crowfeather in the chat room is making a good point. Basically saying Luna's Pocket Galaxy is very close to Skull of the Minari. And it's true. Skull of the Minari is a really, really good comparison there, because it's the kind of card where, yeah, if a warlock could actually get Skull down on 5 and not be in danger of dying, then they basically got this insane power swing, because they had, then their Void Daddies coming out for free, and it was gross. So I think, yeah, that turn 5 is a really interesting point in the game in general, where, you know, if you're not being pressured enough, you can do these big like power spikes that don't impact the board. And in the past, that's just been too early in the game for other classes to then either kill them fast enough or be able to deal with what happens turn 6 and forward. So yeah, I think there are, again, Pocket Galaxy, I think, is one of those things where you could potentially make other changes other than mana, similar to Boom. Like, you know, you could go through and you could change things like, you know, making it cost 2 or 3 instead of 1. But then it's like, is that powerful enough to still play it on 5? Like, who knows? So I think there is other potential changes other than mana cost to that card because they have these complicated and interesting effects. So we'll see. But I think Conjurer's Calling is another one that is just problematic and people have been talking about forever. And I think Mage and Warrior are the two classes that will probably be targeted the most because they're the ones that change the least from last expansion to this one.
Yeah, and that like historically is where Hearthstone tends to set its sights, right? Like when things aren't that different after an expansion is usually when they will intervene. And Warrior certainly has started shoveling a lot of taunt cards into their deck post-expansion, but they're still more or less doing the same thing they were doing. They just have even more power in their taunt bodies now. So I don't, that's why I find this interesting, because I'm kind of curious what they're zeroing in on. I like, are they going to zero in on esports, which I feel like then you're focusing on Warrior, you're focusing on Mage. Are they going to do anything for ladder? Like, because what I was saying, like kind of what I was getting at with like, oh, I think it's still kind of hard. I don't think there's an easy answer on Boom. I don't even really necessarily think there's an easy answer with either Pocket Galaxy or Conjurer's Calling. It's just that the overall power level again, having trouble speaking, but the overall power across multiple archetypes right now is pretty high. It's keeping the meta settled in a certain way. So I have to imagine it's a little difficult to balance. But however, the place where my brain goes, okay, well, maybe it's not so bad, is that it's not really keeping the aggro decks in check. Like Murloc Paladin eats Mage's lunch and has a pretty decent chance to just roll over a Warrior. Like it's not. So I like, I'm trying to think of it from a ladder standpoint as well.
I was just saying, like, so we've talked about, you know, especially esports wise, Conjure Calling Mage and Dr. Boom for Warrior. Is there anything from any of the other classes that potentially needs to be changed? Like you mentioned Murloc Paladin, like, are you really worried about that deck? Does Tip the Scales, is that too powerful? Like what do you actually, or actually it's not even really Tip the Scales. Tip the Scales on its own is fine. It's more Prismatic Lens that makes that is the driver of that deck. So is that the kind of thing that you think might also be on the chopping block, or is it still kind of too early to be going there? Because Murloc Paladin, I mean, Murloc Shaman's another one. Murlocs are always going to be around because they're basic classic, right? So a go-to aggro deck that's always going to be viable is insert class here plus Murlocs. So is
much like Tip the Scales, I don't think Murlocs are the problem. It's Prismatic Lens. So to your question of do I think it's on the chopping block? My answer is going to be bratty. I think it should be. I don't think it is. Like for all I want to preface all of this with 2019 has been a dope ass year for Hearthstone. Team 5's been killing it. I love what they've been doing. The one thing they haven't really like flexed on is like their speed at which they make a change that maybe the community is feeling months before they decide to act on. You know, if there are balance changes coming, I would bet a lot of money on Warrior and Mage, and I would also bet a lot of money on anything we're currently thinking is kind of powerful, like Prismatic Lens in Murloc Paladin being completely untouched, because that is that's the kind of thing where they go, we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, that's like the go-to Hearthstone team comment, right? We're keeping an eye on it. We're watching it. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm just like, I think Paladin in general is just always kind of strong, and I think that's okay. I mean, the other kind of class that's doing consistently well and kind of has been doing consistently well is Hunter. But I don't know if there's anything necessarily overpowered going on in Hunter right now. I think it's just kind of solid. So I don't know if anything in Hunter needs to be changed, but it also feels like Hunter has been good and viable for a long time now because of Rexar, right? There was the age of Rexar. And then so the fact that when he rotated, there were still viable options to play with Hunter makes it feel like Hunter's been around for a really long time. And there's 3 viable ways to play Hunter right now. But I think they're all good. Like they all feel like balanced. I don't feel like there are these crazy spiky power turns like Boom and Conjur's calling on giants sort of thing. Like I feel like Hunter just is solid.
I'm totally with you. Hunter's like it's like the gentleman's class. Like you don't like I don't mind losing to them.
Back 4 years ago when the only thing people were playing would be like Undertaker Hunter or like Face Hunter. Did you ever think that we would be in a place where we were like, yeah, Hunter is the way to play Hearthstone, the fair way, the gentleman's way.
But that's it.
What world are we living in right now?
I'm going to double down on it because it proves the point I've been trying to make this entire time, which is that, like, I don't envy Team 5's job. There's so much power spread across different archetypes right now. It's like, where do you really focus and how can you truly predict how that's going to affect the meta?
Yeah.
It's interesting because this is an interesting place for me because usually when I hear a nerf is coming, I'm like, finally. And I do feel that way about Warrior. I really do. I'm so done with Warrior. I'm salty about it, but I'm like, I'm just done talking about it. So I don't want to like harp on it too much. But overall, I think the ladder is not that bad right now.
Mm-hmm.
I see a decent amount of class diversity. And I only want to crack my monitor in half when Boom comes down.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I mean, the last kind of class that would probably potentially deserve some talking points would be Rogue, because I feel like Rogue was around for quite a while, but Rogue's another one I don't necessarily feel like right now they have anything that is like targetable, I guess. They're another one that feels powerful, but fairly balanced, unless we're going to talk about, Prep Van Cleef and all that crap again. But I feel like we've probably talked those to death, and they might maybe get Hall of Famed in April. Who knows? But yeah,
I think there's a
outside of their basic classic set, I don't think that there's anything that Rogues are doing right now that's really truly disgusting.
I'll keep my eye on Rogue. I bet something's going to the Hall of Fame. Something's coming to the Hall of Fame. But that is a class I'm mildly concerned about. If Mage and Warrior kind of get taken out at the knees, especially Warrior, because Warrior has historically been the foil to Rogue in the recent Hearthstone meta. What does Rogue look like? And I don't know. And I mean, they could still nerf. They may find a way to nerf Warrior, but still help it keep. It can still keep Rogue in check. It may not have to change its game plan too much. I'm trying to caution myself or check myself from talking about potential nerfs we don't even know about yet as like, these will just cripple the class. Like, because they might not. They might be fair.
They might not, yeah.
They might just like make the game a little bit better, but keep the archetype alive, which I think is where a lot of us would consider to be a good thing. And we'd be happy about it. So anyways, I have a feeling we're going to be able to talk about the actual nerfs next week.
Yeah.
So I think we can end this talk there.
Speculation is so fun.
Speculation is fun. And I mean, that's podcasting. You open up the dictionary to podcasting and it just says speculation from between 20 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
20 minutes to 3 hours.
Oh, I was like 20 hours. Who does a 20-hour show? Jeez.
Should have inserted minutes in there. We got a little tip about Zephyrus from Waylon. This was while answering a concern about Zephyrus offering better choices when you're all out of cards. Peter Whalen offered up a really cool tip on how to game Zephyrus into offering you value 9-drops. Whalen said that in response to the question, it was specifying and reiterating that, hey, only pulls from Basic Classic. So your best bets are usually Tyrion, Ysera, or Jiraxis. But then he got really specific and said that if you want one of the 9-drops, meaning Ysera or Jiraxis, that you should spend your mana down low before you play him so that Zephyrus doesn't offer you something that you could play that turn, meaning that he's basically going to just shove Tyrion at you over and over again if you have 10 mana and you play a Zephyrus and you got no other options. But if you really want a Ysera or a Jiraxis, that you can game the system, that you can get your mana below that 8 mana mark and you won't see a Tyrion.
Yeah, which is something that they had said kind of off the bat anyways, is that, he's going to look at this turn first and see if there's anything powerful he can offer you. And if not, he's going to offer you the best possible choice for the next turn. So, I mean, this is kind of reiterating something that was said to us back when Zephyrus was first announced. But I mean, it's definitely worth mentioning is that, he has like an order of operations that he checks, right? So, like he'll look for this turn first and what you can do this turn, and do you need to like survive, or can you possibly kill them, and I mean, even like Cora said last week, there's the possibility that he'll see a lethal that you don't see. But he'll always look at this turn first. But if you as a player are specifically trying to target something, I mean, this is also the reason why you play him straight up on turn 2, is because then he's going to offer you wild growth. So if that's something that you want to do, like that's how you manipulate him, is you play him on turn 2 so that he will give you something for next turn, because there's nothing you could do of value on turn 2 with no mana. So he won't even look at this turn. So later on in the game, then that's where things get super interesting, because like, do you play him? Like you basically have to play him to target either this turn or next turn. Like, do you want something worth 6 or 8 mana? And you like hero power Zephyrus if there's a 6-drop that will be perfect. So it is a lot of manipulation of mana, and it's always something to keep in mind when playing Zephyrus.
Yes. I just like that Waylon gave a really specific tip. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Midnight Bomber says Zephyrus needs to offer weapon removal versus Warlock 0 attack weapon in Wild. I didn't realize this was an issue. Is that true? Ooh, I know they said they didn't want to like specifically alter Zephyrus too much, but that's, maybe like how they taught Zephyrus how Doomsayers work. They need to teach Zephyrus how
zero attack weapons work.
Yeah. Also in kind of blue chatter this week, Ixar dropped a bit of a bomb regarding Arena, saying that in upcoming patch 15.4, they're going to try doing an Arena patch without buckets and have all of the cards be part of one giant pool. In his words, similar to how the early days of Arena work. I would argue basically exactly how early days of Arena worked.
Well, and so this is kind of the question around his comment. So in the early days of Arena, our buckets were essentially rarity. So are we going to a place where we just have one giant pool regardless of anything? Or are we going back to a rarity-based pool of cards? So like you'll get 3 commons, 3 rares, 3 epics,
whatever. It sounds like the rarity is still taking a backseat. So it's not exactly the same.
Okay, so yeah, because that is my question, right? Are we going back to the way how early days of Arena was, or are we just saying throw everything out of the window and you legit get a selection of 3 random cards? Like, I feel like Arena's going to be nuts.
Well, they're still going to have to address it, and XR went on to like say that like a big reason of this is that they're wanting to hot fix Arena more quickly, and that buckets kind of hamstring that desire. But I mean, we're gonna have to see, right? This is just it's essentially like a 2-paragraph reply from XR, and it doesn't deep dive, but it has sent the Arena community into a bit of a fervor.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I mean, how long have we had buckets now? 2 years?
That
and it
long.
Seemed like
has it been 2 years.
I think so. I give or take, but I think it's been about 2 years we've been talking about buckets. Yeah, really. So I feel like, they've kind of settled into this, and it seems just like a huge change, because the buckets were a lot more work. Yes, they would make it very difficult to balance and make changes, but it felt like it kind of kept Arena in balance, and this feels like it's going to throw Arena way out of balance. I don't know. I don't play it often enough to truly make a determination on what this is going to mean. But what it does mean is a huge change to the way things have been working lately. And it seemed like when they focused their attention to Arena, buckets was a solution that they came up with, and they've been managing those buckets since then. So to throw out all of that 2 years of work seems a little bit nuts to me.
It does, but boy, this is just a year of rampant change and experimentation. It feels like with Hearthstone, whether it's esports, and now we're seeing this with Arena.
Yeah, so I mean, I do, like, you're right. They have been making kind of radical changes, and they've been quick to respond to stuff. So I feel like if they do this and it doesn't work, then they'll revert back to buckets. But just the fact that this is something that they're thinking of doing, I think is kind of crazy.
It is. And it's kind of, I don't know. It brings up kind of, in my head, my brain immediately goes back to the talk of, should there be a PTR? Yes, it's hard overall for a game like this, but maybe there should be an arena PTR at least. I mean, obviously they are clearly more than happy to experiment with their with their actual competition in the middle of it. So I don't think we should be surprised that they're willing to experiment this heavily in arena. But I don't know. I don't begrudge anyone who plays arena as their main mode of Hearthstone and is very concerned about this.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how it shakes out. But anyways, before we get into this week's strategy segment and talk about Quest Druid, we're highlighting Quest Druid this week. We have a sponsor to thank today. Jocelyn, BarkBox is back, and I couldn't be more excited because I legitimately love this product. We've been subscribed to BarkBox for years now. I don't remember exactly how long, but it's definitely been longer than a year. So if you're unfamiliar, BarkBox, basically they deliver like rad dog toys, all natural treats. It's essentially dog joy in a box that shows up on your doorstep monthly. It's wonderful. They design their own toys in-house. They use really good materials. They use like stomach safe t-shirt rope, so if your dog accidentally eats the rope, which mine have.
I love how you say
done.
accidentally when, like, honestly, our dog is just like, she eats everything. Like, so we're doing renovations at the cottage right now, and there are just like pieces of 2x4 lying around. So like the stuff you use to make walls, and she's like just chewing through it like it's nothing, and she's just eating all this wood. Like, why? But the BarkBox toys, she can't get through them. It's great.
Just dog things.
Just dog things.
If they do get through them, sometimes they have like spiky ball cores, like on purpose. So there's like they break the sucker open, and then there's like another toy inside it. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And the treats are made and produced with meat sourced in the U.S. and Canada. There is no soy, corn, or wheat in these treats, which is great because totally have one dog that just breaks out like crazy when they have grain. It's a total nightmare. So that's a big plus for us. So again, all this is shipped directly to your door. It's a $40 value that starts at $22 a month. I love unboxing this. Like Katie, me, the humans in the house, we get excited when the BarkBox shows up because it's like time to open it up. And we have 3 Chihuahuas now, guys. Like they get stoked. Can you imagine 3 Chihuahuas standing on their hind legs looking at you open this box, and you get excited and they're even more excited. And then you start divvying out the toys and the treats, and it's so much fun, Jocelyn.
Does 3 Chihuahuas make a pack? Like, how many animals do you have to have before you have a pack of dogs?
We in the home refer to them as a gaggle of Chihuahuas.
I like it.
Yep. It's the chi gaggle. We use the term chi as a shorthand in this house. Cheese for plural. And yeah. Anyways, go check out BarkBox. You can get a free extra month when you go to barkbox.com/barkingchicken when you subscribe to a 6 or 12-month plan. Again, that's an extra month, a free extra month of BarkBox when you sign up for a 6 or 12-month plan when you go to barkbox.com/barkingchicken. Go there now. Let them know we sent you. Get your dog some dope toys and great treats. We thank them for their support. Now, let's talk Quest Druid.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay.
So, Quest Druid it seems to be in a constant state of flux, Jocelyn. Like we the Druid Nation have not come to a consensus on just what this deck list, what this archetype should look like. So there is a decent amount of variance if you go out there and you start looking around for deck lists, which if you're the type of person that likes to have multiple versions of a deck or try different things out or even have a different flavor to an overall like skeleton, this is a really good deck to try right now. Obviously, as its name would suggest, it is very much based around the Druid quest. So you're going to want to start the game by ending turns with excess mana. But really, there's the most popular version right now, at least if we're looking at statistics, is actually a Malagos Quest Druid. But there's also kind of a more what I'm calling like pure quest druid that it's not interested in dropping Malagos and burning you out. That's a little more interested in board clear and just getting high value out of your passive hero power once you complete your quest and getting both options of your choose one cards. It's very strong. But the Malagos druid is you've probably run into one if you've been playing on ladder. There's quite a few druids doing that. But the pure quest druid and this is just what I'm calling it, is seeing better win rates on ladder.
Yeah, and so the Malagos Druid is most popular, but I do prefer the non-Malagos version, and it's probably just because I tend to stay away from Malagos decks in general. They don't really appeal to me as much as other decks do, particularly in Druid. And the Quest Druid, the thing that I like about the Quest Druid is that it's slowly being refined, but there are a few different ways to play this. Well, not really to play, but to build this quest deck without Malagos. And there's some really interesting substitutions you can make. There's a core, but you can mess around with some of the other pieces. And I've seen people even do things like putting Zephyrus and Elise in this deck, even though it doesn't have singletons. Like, it's not all one copy of everything. There are duplicates, but you tend to draw through this deck fast enough that you can potentially get the value out of those one of singleton cards. So you can even, especially since Floop is in this deck, you can even do things like, get multiple copies of Zephyrus because of Floop and Elise as well, duplicating your hand. So there's some potential power swings with that version of the deck, but there's also a lot of power swings that you get even early game, even though it would seem like you wouldn't, because you're floating mana, right? So
yeah, well, I mean, a lot of that is kind of helped by the Crystal Merchant, which makes me want to kind of talk about like I was trying to wrap my brain around this and how best to kind of talk about on the show, because there's so much variance from one deck list to the other. But I started zeroing in on like, what is the Quest Druid package? What are the common cards? What are the
Step one, quest?
Yes, obviously the quest. But the other cards that are basically in every version of this, even the Malagos one, which is wildly different from most of the other quest druids, is Worthy Expedition. That's the new 1 mana discover a choose one card, or the choose one card, as I like to call it. The Crystal Merchant and Wrath. Like they're Wrath, not a new card, but in all of these. But they're also running War Druid Lodi, Floop, Starfall, Oasis Surger, Hidden Oasis, and Nourish. And again, I am including the Malagos Druid in this as well. These are all the common cards that kind of build up the skeleton of the quest package. Yeah.
Right. They're kind of like your best choose ones. And then when you look at your kind of, I guess, like late game / win condition, you kind of have the non-Malagos version going with Cenarius as your top end. And then the Malagos version, obviously, with Malagos as your top end.
Yes. Yeah. Malagos does tend to end the curve.
Yes. And I mean, I prefer playing Cenarius. I think he's a lot of fun, and I like the kind of board centric way of playing this deck, as opposed to just like, I drop Malagos and burn your face out. I think Cenarius, I mean, they both take a lot of planning to set up your win condition, but I don't know. Cenarius I find way more satisfying than Moonfire Malagos stuff. But the way to actually play this deck, I think, is a huge talking point, because when you first look at Quest Druid, it very much feels like I need to like build it with all the choose one cards and then complete my quest as fast as possible. And then I have these ridiculously strong power swingy type turns, and then I win the game. And in general, yes, you do want to complete your quest as fast as possible. But the other thing that you have to remember is that you are still playing Druid. So delaying your quest completion by a turn or two in order to hang on to the board is actually the correct way to play this deck. So if that means playing bees on turn 3 in order to hang on to the board against a hunter, or, like anything like that, because you do want to make sure that you aren't losing control. You don't have access to naturalize anymore. And if boards get too big and too wide and out of control, then your tools like Starfall, even after you've completed the quest, aren't going to be that powerful, because when you try to clear the board, you're not actually doing anything to stay ahead. You're coming from behind all the time, and you don't want to be doing that as Druid kind of ever. So with this deck, you actually have to be completing the quest as fast as possible, yes, but taking a couple turns off to make sure that you are also maintaining tempo is really, really important. And I think you'll win a lot more if you're trying to do that as opposed to just rushing out the quest.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, as we kind of talking about the mulligan in the same breath as this is where Crystal Merchant just helps a lot, because this is a 1/4 that only costs you 2 mana that helps you complete your quest, that also is very easy to play and leave a mana up as a result of the pack that only costs 2 mana. So Crystal Merchant is just so damn important to this deck.
Yeah, there's actually one of the most powerful things you can actually do in this deck, if you have the coin, is actually coining out Crystal Merchant and playing Crystal Merchant on turn 1. Because of that big booty 4 health, it's very, very likely that card is gonna stick around. Then the next turn, so when you have 2 mana, that's when you actually play your quest. You're floating the mana, so you play your quest, you draw a card, you've got a 1/4 on board, and that's kind of going to be the driving, like the engine of your deck. If you're on the coin, it's so powerful.
I like big merchant, I cannot lie. Your 1 mana can't deny. Yeah.
Yeah, that just happened.
It's a good card. Did we
One
mention
other thing? Sorry.
I was going to with the while we're talking Mulligan Questing Explorer, if you're running it, it is not. I did not mention that in the package. You'll notice it's a notable exclusion, because there's quite a few Druid lists out there that are doing the quest thing that have decided to just omit Questing Explorer.
Yeah, Questing Explorer is a powerful card in the very, very early game, assuming your quest is still up. The problem with Quest Druid, as opposed to something like possibly even Quest Priest or Quest Paladin, is that you complete your quest so early on that then when you draw Questing Explorer late game, it does literally nothing other than being a 2 mana 2/3. If you're going with a board centric strategy, that can be okay, but it's still, it's not nearly as powerful as some of the substitutions that I mentioned earlier. If you take out 2 Questing Explorers and add Elise and Zephyrus, you're probably going to get a whole lot more late game value, and you're not really sacrificing that much early game because Crystal Merchant is a thing. And because I'm totally blanking on the 1 mana spell we talked about earlier now. Worthy Expedition. Yeah. So you've kind of got the Worthy Expedition and the Crystal Merchant as your tools. So if you do choose to opt out of Questing Explorer, you're not really losing that much early game, and you're potentially gaining a whole lot more late game. So Questing Explorer is one of those pieces of this deck that I'm kind of on the bubble about. I don't really think that they're as good as we originally thought that the Questing Explorer is going to be, but it is a rare. It's an option if you don't have the legendaries. It's not terrible. So I think that you could probably put Questing Explorers in when you first start playing this deck, and then over time, as you open more packs or gain more dust or more gold, you could potentially move yourself towards crafting an Elise. I'm assuming everybody crafted Zephyrus because, yeah, so good.
I mean, if there's one legendary, when we get those questions of, hey, where should I spend? If I have enough dust for one legendary, what's one legendary I should get? Yeah, Zephyrus. Do it.
I still think CMAT is good too.
Yes, except I hate that name. And I hate that that's where we ended up. Siamat is so much more fun to say.
True. But yeah, so Questing Explorers do represent some of your flex. There's also Hidden Oasis, I would say, is also one of your potential flex cards, because Hidden Oasis is amazing in terms of after you finish your quest and if you're facing aggro, then, the ability to get that 12 health back as well as have that 6/6 taunt, that's a really big power swing if you're playing against an aggressive deck. However, if in the meta at the current time, at the current place on the ladder where you're playing, has a lot of warriors, has a lot of mages, then you're probably not going to get as much out of Hidden Oasis as you would if you're facing a whole lot of Murloc Paladins or something. I mean, the other thing is, if you're playing against an aggro deck, then you're probably going to be doing things like using bees and using swipe on curve, which is going to push your quest completion back a little bit. So again, Hidden Oasis might not get the use right on turn 6.
Which again,
it's one of those swing cards. It depends on the meta, I think.
Yeah, but if you find yourself in those situations, it's the right thing to do.
100%. 100%. It's a huge swing. Yeah.
On top of that, bees and swipe get no bonus from your quest being completed, so burn those suckers up.
Yeah, exactly.
Use them when you need them. Don't get too greedy with it. Listen, you will have time to get greedy with this deck.
Yeah, and the other kind of big mid-game power spikes that you actually get after you've completed the quest, I cannot believe how amazingly good Oasis Surger is. We thought it was going to be good, but it is absolutely insane. Once you completed the quest, 2 rushing 5/5s, amazing.
It is the MVP of this deck for me. Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was going to be a Nubisat Defender. That's what it's called, right? Is it Defender? Yes, a Nubisat Defender, which this was the first deck you made. So I went and found an older list that was it's more of a token-based quest druid, which they're still out there, but they're not as prominent as they were like week 1. But that was the 5-mana 5/3 that it cost nothing if you cast a spell that was 5 or more this turn. I thought this was going to be like a star card in this deck, and nope, getting the cut in a lot of different quest druid lists out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad card. It just doesn't necessarily need to exist in this. There's other better options when you're looking at this deck, because I mean, you've got no one is really playing Overflow, whatever the card is that heals everything for 5 and draws you 5 cards. Yeah. You don't really need that because you have Nourish. So you've kind of got Starfall and Nourish as your spells for over that amount. So you're not really actually getting as much value out of those defenders, right? Defenders?
Yes, yeah. Which is to say, if you like, you're cutting your questing exploration and looking for cards to put back in, because you do have Starfall, you do have Hidden Oasis, you do have Nourish, you could still throw a defender in there and activate its ability of being free. But at the end of the day, Surgers is just super powerful. I mean, Floop is basically a third Surger most games with this deck. Like, it's in there. It's also going to be a second Lodi. You're not going to get the health bonuses, but you're still going to get all the affixes. So if you like, because what this deck is missing is hard removal, like hard single target. That's a giant threat. I need it dead. That's where the poisonous of a Lodi becomes really important.
Yeah, so Lodi ends up getting, when you play her the first time, she actually combines all 4 of her forms, which means it's a 4/6 stealth spell-powered rushing poisonous minion, right? Taunted.
I think you forgot taunt.
Yeah, taunt. Yeah.
Yeah. I always forget
all the keywords.
Yeah, because we weren't playing more Druid Lodi, so I always forget. But I always forget most of the things about Lodi. But the big thing I forgot was that poisonous and stealth are on the same option.
Yes.
So I'm like, well, there's four options. Why does she have 5 affixes? It's like, oh, if you go the Ravasaur transformation, you get poisonous and stealth. But
yeah, so when you play Lodi out of your hand, she gets all of that. And then when you play the Floop version, he is a copy of the minion you just played. So he doesn't actually go through all the iterations of changing health and stuff. He gets you get the 3/4 stat line, then with all the affixes that come with Lodi. So he still has Rush and Poisonous, which again is really good for single target removal. So I think, Lodi is another one that kind of I wasn't really thinking of, because I didn't really understand or realize how her text would actually interact with the quest completion, because her choose one is actually a choice between 4 options, and most of the time our choose ones were a choice between 2. So that's really easy. Like, you nourish and you get your card draw and your mana generation. But with Lodi having all 4 options, I was like, do they stack on top of each other? Do you how does this work? Is it a buff? Like, what even happens? And it turns out she just combines all 4 of her forms and is ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, I think it's it's because the term both is used in the Osirian tier, or Osirian tier. And it's like, well, these are 4, so you wouldn't use both to describe that, but whatever. It's Hearthstone, let's move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But this is it's such a cool archetype. The thing is, though, right now, it struggles so hard against a warrior.
Yeah, and I think so. If you're seeing a lot of warrior, this is where you want to take out questing explorers and you want to put in, or even hidden oasis, because hidden oasis you're not going to get that much use out of really like early on or like mid game. You might potentially be able to live an extra turn later on in the game, but it's not as impactful and powerful as potentially your Zephyrus and your Elise could be. So if you're in a place where you're seeing a lot of warrior, I think you sub those cards out. I think you take out Questing Explorer, but I would take Questing Explorer out and I would put in Zephyrus and Elise, because that's going to give you a lot more value. It's going to let you have, multiple floops, multiple scenarios, scenariuses. But yeah, it's going to allow you to have those multiples of your late game big bomb type things. So I really think that if you're seeing a lot of warrior, that's when you start doing your substitution, because it's a pretty terrible matchup. Otherwise, I think it's like, 25% or something?
It's in the 30s if you're looking at it like HS replay.
Okay.
If you're seeing a lot of warrior, really that's when
you
should probably start it. Like if you're dead set on Druid, you should start taking a look at the Malagos list, because it does a way better job against the warriors that are out there.
Yeah.
But
it does. And so this is the kind of thing is right now it has some bad matchups on ladder. So you're kind of like, you're not doing so hot against Zoo Warlock or mages and paladins. So that's combined with control warriors. That's a whole lot of the meta. What it does do really well against is hunters, as well as quest shaman and rogues. So if in the next, because we're assuming balance changes coming in the near future, after the balance changes, also assuming that warrior and mage are going to be targeted, which I think they'd be crazy not to. So if warrior and mage kind of start to drop down in popularity a little bit, and hunters and rogues and shamans start to be more prevalent, then I think Quest Druid is going to be in a really, really good spot, because those are your good matchups, is your hunters, your shamans, and your rogues.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this as well, because I like this archetype a lot. I wasn't lucky enough to crack like the quest, or I don't even think I got a single crystal merchant, so this is still kind of an expensive craft for me.
Yeah, I crafted, I did actually open the quest, but I crafted the crystal merchants like day one.
yeah. But this is what you and I sparred with on day one. If you tuned into our pack opening stream, I immediately went and made a quest paladin, a bad one, not the good one that actually works. And you made a quest druid, and it's just so cool. And then you and I played some games together on your account. And I really like this archetype. I really like the idea of intentionally floating mana. Like Crystal Merchant just feels good. Like when you trigger that Crystal Merchant early in the game, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm doing what I want to do. And I've got a big booty
It's
on
almost
board.
like 1 mana draw a card, as long as it survives, right? Because you're floating that 1 mana and then getting a card for it. So that's a pretty good trade, I think.
Yes, yeah, I agree. That's a great way to look at it. Of course, providing your Crystal Merchant is on board.
Absolutely. And yeah, so Two Arms in the chat room is saying Elise and Floop is disgusting at creating cards and destroys control. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm saying like you should be looking at Elise, and you should be looking at like putting in those technically Highlander singleton condition cards if you're seeing a lot of control warrior.
Yep.
That's your go-to anti-warrior tech, I guess.
Yep. Go out, give this a spin, especially if you already have the cards. If you're trepidatious, take a look at it whenever the nerfs that we don't know about yet come in. And yeah, keep an eye on this. We got links, by the way, to 3 different deck lists. A Malagos Quest Druid, what I've been referring to as the pure Quest Druid, which is what we've mostly been focusing on today, and also a more token-focused Quest Druid. Give you guys some options. So go check it out, amove.tv/TAC. Look for the episode 328 post. Show notes are always linked at the bottom of that post. Now, before we move into crazy game stories, emails, and wrap the show up, we have one more sponsor to thank today, and it is Harry's. They're back sponsoring this episode of The Angry Chicken. And I know like summer is like technically still going on for a while, but like we're in August, and like I don't know about you, Joss, I still have like that like, oh, school's back. Oh wait, I'm 30 in my 30s. I don't need to worry about it. Ha ha. The point of
suck it, school kids.
Yeah, we just have to play video games for research. I love explaining that one at Thanksgiving. That's great.
Oh, we're so close to fall. Makes me happy.
It's there. Yeah. Like summer may be coming to an end, but like my travels, Josh, they're like about to get crazy. I looked at my calendar and I'm going to be in states other than Florida more than I am in Florida in the month of October. Like I have so much traveling coming up, and I'm not going to be forgetting my Harry's Razors because I got to look presentable when I'm meeting people that don't see me all the time, as opposed to now, where for all you know, I'm like wearing like clown lounge pants below, my belt line. So
what are clown lounge pants?
I don't know. I was thinking of like what's something garish that would just it's not something that you should wear in public, or at least. Maybe it's
totally thought you were saying like garish as like what would be Garrett-ish. And then I was like, oh no, wait, he means the word garish.
Well, I'll tell you what is Garrett-ish, and that's having your neck beard in check. And I can thank Harry's Razors for that.
I struggle with that all the time.
Oh yeah, I know, Joss. I know. I always thought blonde people, they just, you can't tell. You don't worry about it.
That also is true.
Yeah. So I love my Harry's Razors. They deliver high quality, travel friendly shave supplies at a great low price. It's just $2 per blade. They come with a 100% quality guarantee, which means that if you don't love your shave, you can just let them know and they will give you a full refund. And on top of all of this, you can go and claim a trial set. Just by going to harrys.com/TAC, you're going to get their weighted ergonomic handle. You're going to get a 5-blade razor that also has a lubricating strip and a trimmer blade, which I abuse the hell out of for, my neck beard. And also, your chest hair grows up a little further than you want it to when you wear V-necks. You got to, deal with that as well. You get a rich lathering shave gel, and you get a travel blade cover so you can take it with you. All of this, you just redeem that trial set just by going to harrys.com/TAC. They're big supporters of the show. We appreciate their support. And again, you can redeem your Harry's trial set when you go to harrys.com/TAC. Let them know we sent you, and you'll help support the show in the process. Now let's take a crazy game story. We haven't done one of these in a while. I'm excited to get back to it.
Is the whole world gone crazy?
You're in trouble now.
You got it!
You can send your crazy game stories to tacpodcast@gmail.com, or if you're a patron, drop them in the patron Discord. Joss, who has a crazy tale to regale us today?
This one comes to us from Steve, who says, foul feeling foul friends. I'm sure you're flooded with puzzle block stories, but this one might take it. I'm facing a secret hunter, which is already bad news for Big Spell Mage, but I managed to get a lot of Blizzard help to keep him locked down, and I'm trying to find a line to get Pyros in. To get the Pyros in. So not Pyros, the...
I read that exactly the same way as you did.
Yeah. But Pyros... the 10 mana spell. Puzzle box number 1 gives me Myra's though, so we're in rough shape. Just when I think I've got him, the 2 5-cost Pyros and a frozen board, he throws Zul'jin to get up to 21 health. To make it worse, I'm down to 10 after his spells and fatigue damage, and staring at 3 5/5 wyverns and a hound. I'm out of board clears, so I cast my first Pyro at his face and then roll the dice on a 5-cost puzzle box number 2. Skipping all the irrelevant spells, we see Floop's Glorious Gloop, the Forest Aid into Plague of Death. So if you guys aren't aware, Glorious Gloop gives you more mana based on what dies. Forest Aid gives you a whole bunch of 2/2s, and then Plague of Death kills everything. So basically, mana refill. So
okay.
Steve goes on to say, my mana refills and I'm furiously jamming the second Pyroblast, and one final and absolutely necessary hero power point of damage as the rope winds down. Animations are flying left and right as the hunter explodes. In the best spirit of Hearthstone, my opponent sends me a friend request and we both nearly simultaneously praise Yogg in amazement. This is a really cool game.
I love everything about the story, but the cherry on top is the fact that you had like a mutually friendly experience with a stranger on the internet. There's hope for the world, Jocelyn.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite part of the story too, because I mean, I have stopped sending and receiving friend requests in Hearthstone because I feel like everyone assumes them to be toxic. So the fact that somebody sent a friend request that had died to Yogg and just said, oh my God, that was amazing. That's a great, great story.
I mean, that is the most perfect combination of insanity to like win the game.
Like you have to, whether you're on the giving or receiving end of that puzzle box, you just have to, I mean, it's not even that those 3 spells happened. It's that those 3 spells happened in the right order. Because if you had gotten like Plague of Death into Forest Aid into Gloop, then you would have just died to the hunter. But the fact that it went gloop aid death, that's amazing.
I just love the fact
I love puzzle box stories, but this is a really great one.
Thank you for sharing, Steve. And again, send your crazy game stories in to tacpodcast@gmail.com. You can also send your emails there, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now.
Hello?
Hello, it's me.
Hello?
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
Send your emails to the same place. Also, if you're a patron, you're in the patron Discord, you can leave us questions right there in the Discord. That's exactly what Derpy Bugsy did. Derpy Bugsy writes, so the most recent episode talked about the idea of trying to incorporate multiple formats into the Grandmaster League in order to keep things fresh, like possibly alternating between Specialist and Conquest. What if the Grandmasters format was players submit decks for all 9 classes, they then split the decks up for Conquest with Shield Phase, 4 decks, Last Hero Standing with Shield Phase, 4 decks, and Specialist, 1 deck with 2 variants, then play every week using a different format. If someone chose to bring Mage as their Specialist class, they couldn't use Mage for the Conquest or Last Hero Standing lineups and would use the other 8 classes instead. This way, every class is represented, mirror matches are potentially less likely, and broadcasts will be pretty varied week to week. It's a little convoluted, and immediately I'm poking holes in it because of the making it class. Like you're basically removing classes based on where you're putting your classes for the format. Like you'd have to spend a lot of time sitting and thinking, all right, well, Specialist, I can only play 1 class. What class is the best against the field? Which I feel a lot of players would come to the same conclusion.
Quite possibly. I mean, I love this idea because I like the idea of potentially having all classes represented. I'm sure, like everything in esports, there would be an absolute best iteration of this. Like there's going to be the 4 best classes in Conquest, the 4 best classes in Last Hero Standing, and the best Specialist class for sure. But it becomes very, very interesting because you have to use everything. So if I choose my Specialist deck to be Mage, that means all of a sudden I don't have Mage available for Conquest and Last Hero Standing. Then let's say, okay, my Specialist deck is Mage, so I throw Warrior in Last Hero Standing because I think Warrior can be the one to pull wins against everything. Also have to remember, stuff's going to get banned. So do I even want my Warrior in there? Do I want to try to ensure I get my Warrior as my Specialist thing? Like, there's a lot of potential strategy here that I think would be really cool. The hole I kind of poke in this is, I mean, I guess you submit your whole lineup together, because I was going to say, if you just submit decks for all 9 classes, then it's like, what if one gets chosen that you weren't expecting to be Specialist? But I guess if you do your submission as 4, 4, and 1, then that would be fine, because then you could just say, here's my 1. I was thinking your opponents would choose for you somehow, but that would make no sense. So anyways,
Yeah, I would assume
you'd have to submit as your Specialist deck ahead of time. But yeah, I think this would be the kind of thing that I assume you would submit at the beginning of a season, and then you just rotate through, and you'd have like Conquest, then LHS, then Specialist, and then back to Conquest again through the whole season. So if you do your deck submissions at the beginning of the season, then your opponents get, more information, which also is kind of cool, but it doesn't leave it open for potentially making changes and adjusting. Which means then if you set your whole entire season at the beginning, buffs and nerfs can happen. And then it's like, well, then do they resubmit decks? Like, how does that work? Like, you basically are setting Hearthstone. If you're doing Hearthstone based on your esports, like you're either screwing over your ladder by then not making nerfs and buffs while we're in a competitive season, or you're kind of screwing over your esport by making changes to ladder and stuff. And then like your esport, if you say, okay, we're just going to play on patch, 15.4, then your esport isn't actually reflecting what's happening in your live game.
This was an issue with Heroes forever until they basically stopped the esport.
It was or wasn't an issue?
They were typically they were typically in patch behind every single time there was a major esport event, and it drove me bananas. Yeah, I mean, if this did come through, you'd have to allow deck changes after a balance update. I don't see any way around that. But I mean, really, I would just like to see them try like class bans, like just for like a month. Like, all right, we're just gonna do specialists, or we're just gonna do conquest, or we're just gonna do last hero standing. But you know what? There's no warriors, there's no mages. Go nuts. Like something like that. Like that's simple. It's easy to get your head around, and could lighten things up.
That would actually be really interesting, and something we've never seen Hearthstone esports do, which is, like they don't even want to ban a card, let alone unless it's like actually game breaking, like Whizbang, right? Because Whizbang, you could just say I'm bringing Whizbang and then end up with Shaman every time, and that could be good or bad depending on the meta. So Whizbang is a banned card, but that's just because of the way Whizbang naturally works, where you can't actually submit a deck list, so it's just too hard to police from an administrative standpoint. So, but in terms of like balance, like we haven't seen cards banned for balance reasons. So I think that would be a huge jump for them to go like, we don't want to ban cards to we're going to ban whole entire classes. But I do agree that would make things very interesting. It's like you wouldn't even necessarily have to make balance changes or change your like main game, but you could mix up your esport meta by just saying nobody can play this thing. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a thing they would ever do, but I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I do like the idea of wildly different formats. I mean, if they announce this, I would watch it. Like, absolutely.
Oh, 100%. I think this is such a cool idea.
It's kind of nuts.
I like that all classes get representation, right? So, I mean, other than the 2 classes that would get banned, which again depends entirely upon your deck building and your lineup choices and where you choose to have your specific decks and what you choose to shield and what gets banned. Like, I mean, there would technically for every player be 2 classes that wouldn't be played, but I think those 2 classes that wouldn't necessarily be played could also vary wildly depending on what your strategy is. So I think that it would be so skill testing to see how players would incorporate all 9 classes into lineups like this. And it's the kind of skill test that I would like to see levied at our pinnacle of Hearthstone esports, air quotes.
Oh, why you gotta quote it? Why you gotta quote it?
Because they had what did they call them? I can't even remember what they were called now, but basically the handpicked Hearthstone people that weren't based on earnings or based on points. That's why I air quote pinnacle.
I won't fight you on that. Yeah. But thank you for your suggestion. I'll just call you Bugsy. Yeah, I know Derpy Bugsy, like that's your decision, but I feel like I'm insulting you by calling you Derpy Bugsy. Like, I'm sorry. Keep the emails coming, everybody. We actually have a bit of a lack of post-expansion emails. So send them in. TAC Podcast.
Everyone's too busy actually playing the game to send us questions. They're just really enjoying this meta, so.
I'll allow it. Yeah, so send your questions, send your crazy game stories in. tacpodcast@gmail.com. And again, if you're a patron, the Discord works as well. That's going to wrap it up. It's going to bring us to the end of this podcast. If you like the Angry Chicken, if you like what Joss and I are doing week in, week out, head on over to patreon.com/TAC. The Patreon is the best way to support the show, and we appreciate each and every one of you that have decided to support us over there. Every little bit helps, folks. We really, really can't thank you enough. Also, huge thanks to our producers, Declan H., Sean C., and Cheesy Bob. Thank you for the support, you three. Head on over to shirts.amove.tv, by the way. We're like getting like weirdly close to BlizzCon, and I want to see like Angry Chicken and Jobs Done shirts. I want to see them out in masses.
I love my Jobs Done shirt.
So that if you don't know what I look like, if you're listening to the podcast only, meaning you don't know what I look like, you know, if you're at BlizzCon, you're wearing an Angry Chicken shirt, some dude with big hair out of nowhere is just going to come and give you the most earnest high five you've ever received. And you're like, who is that guy? It's me. The entire back catalog of episodes can be found over at youtube.com/amovetv or just over at the website amove.tv. You can catch us live usually Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, but next week, don't forget, Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern time is when we're recording, making way for WoW Classic. We're going to get that episode out so that y'all can enjoy it while you're leveling as WoW Classic comes out. And, oh boy. Joss, watch them announce the nerfs on Tuesday. We may do a last minute pivot.
That would totally be our luck.
If we get to Monday and there's no nerfs announced, we might do a last minute pivot. But
We'll see.
I've got hope. And we'll definitely have a Celestalon interview regardless. So
I'm so stoked for that, man.
Yeah, I've got a great show.
Zephyrus is just such a cool card. I'm really stoked to talk to him about how they designed that thing.
I am too. I'm really excited. I'm just so excited. Celestalon. I've been like a Celestalon fan since he was over on World of Warcraft. So like I've never met the dude. I've been to, oh my God, almost 10 BlizzCons.
A lot BlizzCons.
Almost 10 BlizzCons, and I have never met Celestalon. So I'm really excited that he's coming on the show. Thanks again to the team for putting that together for us, and you'll see that on the next episode. But before we go, Jocelyn, you make all kinds of other rad content besides the Angry Chicken. Where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. That's JOCE Plays. I'm going to be actually talking Gamescom on Pixels this week. And that's something I don't normally talk about is when I do my guest spots over on Pixels. So go and check that out. That is Patrick Beja's podcast on French Spin. So yeah, it's called Pixels. I'm really stoked to talk all the cool Gamescom news. So go and check that out.
That's dope. I've been on Pixels many times. Although Patrick, if you're listening, I haven't been on in like a year. What the shit, man?
I did the Game of the Year episode last year, and we realized I hadn't been on Pixel since the Game of the Year episode the year before. And Patrick was like, we're not letting that happen again. So I get to be on the Gamescom episode this time. I'm stoked.
Are you gonna talk about Need for Speed Heat, Jocelyn?
Of course. That's like the biggest thing.
We finally got to see gameplay. I thought the trailer looked lame, but then they showed gameplay, and I'm like, okay, never mind. It's taking place in Florida. I'm into this Need for Speed again.
Garrett is so easy to please. Just set your game in Florida, and he's all about it.
Everyone forgets about Florida, Jocelyn. Nobody
on purpose, Garrett.
respects
on purpose.
Florida. On purpose. Oh, excuse me. You know what? I went to Toronto for your wedding, and all it is it's just Florida malls transplanted to a cold climate.
You take that back.
I'm not even joking, because I got there super late. I opened my hotel curtain, and I look out, and I'm like, man, this just looks like Florida with snow. Like, because it was this giant mall. The hotel I stayed in, there's this giant mall across the street. And I'm just like, God, this just looks like I'm in my hometown, but for some reason, it's freezing temperatures. Yeah, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it, Jocelyn. If Florida's so bad, why do I have to get stuck behind so many Canadian license plates where I live? Y'all come down here. You just go back to Canada when you need to see a doctor. Folks, you can follow me on Twitter saying equally as absurd things at Garrett Art, 2 R's and 2 T's and Garrett. All the podcasts that I do, this one included, over at amove.tv. Check out Into the Nexus. We're still going strong, still covering Heroes of the Storm, the dead game that just refuses to die. Ain't dead yet.
I saw Ro tweet out that you guys are like one of the last 3 Heroes podcasts. Keep going, man. You got this.
Listen, it's tough at the top. It's tough. Actually, I'm really sad. There's the Heroes podcasting community was like tight at a certain point. Like they actually invited us to events. We actually got to meet each other. Like it's sad. That for me is the saddest part. And I realize it's privilege, because if I worked in eSports, I am literally without a job as a result of everything that happened with Heroes. I'm really lucky that I went down the podcast route, and that show has such a rad community. And it shares some of that community with this show, and y'all are awesome. So check it out. Into the Nexus. Still going strong. We're not gonna stop until we're forced to.
Take that, Heroes team. We're gonna cover you no matter what.
We refuse. We refuse. Although, seriously, Heroes, whoever the new CM is, please hit us up. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Angry Chicken. Thank you all for tuning in. We will be back next week, a day earlier than usual. We're going to talk to Celestalon, talk about Zephyrus, probably talk about some nerfs. But until then, job's done.
Job's done.